Welcome to the LoveWorks podcast. My name is Chris Duncan, and my wife Jennifer and I are marriage coaches and ministers in our local church. We've been married for over 20 years and have 6 wonderful children. Over the years, we've experienced infertility, miscarriages, become parents, had career changes, fostered children, and adopted triplets, which among many other life experiences have helped to shape us, our marriage, and our family. We hope to share some of the things we've learned to help others with their journey to have a successful marriage and a strong family, while keeping a focus on our faith as a guide. Thanks for listening, and as always, remember, love works, so let's get to work. Welcome back to the LoveWorks podcast. My name is Chris Duncan, and I'm here with the love of my life, my wife, Jennifer Duncan, and we're so honored you've chosen to join us today. If you're new to the show, we release episodes bi-weekly. And actually, with that being said, I'd like to say thank you and welcome to some new listeners that we have in India and Australia. So the LoveWorks podcast is currently being listened to in United States, Germany, Canada, South Africa, Denmark, the UK, Finland, Philippines, Kenya, Australia, and now India as well. So thank you, everybody who's listening. Please continue to share, subscribe, comment on your favorite podcast platform. Again, subscribe, rate, and share because that really helps us with algorithms on Spotify and Apple and wherever that you might listen. So also, we'd love to hear from you. So if you'd like to reach out, you can on our social media platforms, the LoveWorks Podcast on Facebook or the LoveWorks Podcast on Instagram. You can direct message us on those accounts, or if you'd like to go old school, you can email us at loveworkspodcast@gmail.com.
Awesome. All right, we're going right into the part of our show that we call What's That? Which is what my 18-month-old today says. I know, I can't believe it. What he says about everything, right? He's in that stage where, what's that? What's that? What's that? What's that? Everything's what's that? So this is a part of our show that we talk about something that's gone on during the week, kind of give you a little insight into the Duncan household. You could see and enjoy part of our craziness, and it'll also let us look back in, a couple years and remember some of these things that we've forgotten. No.
There you go. If we're the only ones that listen, we'll be like, hey, remember that?
So what's yours this week?
Oh, man. So this week, we actually just came back. It's Saturday. We're recording Saturday night, pretty late, but we just got back Friday for the girls, our triplets' birthday. We went to San Diego, did a little camping trip. If you listened to our last episode, I believe we mentioned something about Rowan, one of the triplets, saying she wanted a new camper for her birthday. Yeah. She didn't get one.
Oh, man.
And so we were camping, but we were camping in San Diego, and we're out on the water at Santee Lakes. We're actually in the paddle boats. We rented the Swan and a dragon, I think. Yeah, so we had a purple dragon and a white swan. We're out there on the water. It was a beautiful day. None of us wearing jackets. And all of a sudden, it gets cloudy. And we're like, oh, interesting. All right. A little bit cooler weather. No problem. And then all of a sudden, it starts pouring rain. Just
hell.
Buckets.
And
yes.
hell.
And then all of a sudden, hail is coming out of the sky. And so we're in the middle of the lake. Thunder, hail, rain, out of nowhere. And the kids are freaking out and laughing. Harper's in my boat, trying to half help me paddle and half dive into the lake for some reason. So one of the workers came running to the edge, yelling out to us, you need to come in. There's a storm. We're like, really? Oh, I hadn't noticed.
We hadn't noticed we're being pelted.
So that was kind of my what's that? We're in the middle of the lake, sunny, and then all of a sudden, bang.
No, I think the best part is since then, literally every single person we've seen or talked to, the girls are like, hell came when we were in the middle of the lake.
Yes.
There was hell. And I'm like, that's the wrong kind of hell. Everyone's just looking at him like, what is wrong with these children?
Your kids are
Hell
crazy.
came.
They're like, oh my word, what are these parents doing?
What's that? There's been so many this week, but this one was kind of cute. So Harper, actually I had taken the girls to the store. They had some money from the tooth fairy that they wanted to spend, so we decided to go hit the Dollar Tree. And we're over there and we're getting all this stuff. And so we get in line and this elderly gentleman in front of us turns around. He's like, are they triplets? I was like, yeah. And he's like, oh my goodness, I've never seen triplets in my whole life. And he's like freaking out about, seeing the girls and asking them their names and asking them all these questions, And so the girls, especially Harper, she likes to tell everyone pretty much everything about our life. So if we ever, meet anyone who's a identity thief, we're in big trouble.
Yes.
But we're going on. And so we leave the store. And so I was like, talking to the girls, I was like, yeah, I said, because you guys are triplets, that's sometimes, that's something really neat for people to see because they've never seen triplets before. And so she's like, oh, okay. I was like, yeah, because, there's not a lot of triplets. Usually people are just born one at a time. So she's like sitting back there and she goes, Mom, like what? She's like, that means you're pretty lucky to have us, huh? I'm like, yep. That's what that means. Some days it doesn't feel like that.
Every day. We're so lucky.
So it's just so crazy. It's like, oh, that means you're pretty lucky to have us. Yeah. Yep. That's what that means.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Kids are the best. If you don't have any, have a bunch. At least 6.
It makes it way more exciting.
Actually, kind of a rabbit trail thought. Jen mentioned the tooth fairy. We do something, and actually, I believe that I got this from, I'm not going to say because just in case their children overhear this, I don't want them to know. But for our girls and our children, the boys too, their teeth are gone now, but they got adult teeth. But we do a gold dollar for the tooth fairy. So
because we're cheap and because it's really cool.
We got 6 kids, man. And so the gold dollar, you do that. So you can go into your credit union bank. I normally go to the credit union and buy a couple bundles, or however you call it, a couple rolls at a time so we can have them on hand. So if you need an idea for the tooth fairy, if that's something that you do, it's cool. It's inexpensive. It's $1. So, but it's something that they don't see every day. It's a gold coin. They think it's, worth more than $1.
Gold coin and a little bit of gold glitter on their pillow.
Go. The glitter adds a little extra touch. So there you go. Rabbit trail idea if anybody needed it.
If you came to this podcast, you're like, you know what? I need some advice on the tooth fairy.
Bang,
we gotcha.
We gotcha. So today's episode is on, is the tooth fairy real? No. All right. Actually, today's episode is part 2 of our adoption journey. Our last episode number 11, we actually started our adoption journey, and we were like, oh, we'll go ahead and get through this in one. Well, at like hour 6, we're like, maybe we should do part 2. So here we are today with part 2. And so I'm just going to jump right into the topics that we're going to discuss tonight. The first one that I want to talk about is adjusting to parenthood. So when you're adopting or fostering children, I think a key thing to realize and really settle is these are my children. So whether it is a foster child or you've adopted them, they're mine. Treat them as such. I think sometimes people, they don't adjust appropriately to parenthood with that when they're either fostering or adopting. And you would think, oh, that's so simple. But when you meet them, I've had people say, oh, this is my adoptive or my, foster or whatever. I never do that. These are my children. And so I think the first thing to adjusting to parent is really you need to set that in your mind that these are my children and to teach them as such. And we all know if you have children, if you have one child or two or 20, there's obviously an adjustment to your life. So you have to think about that as well. You can never be fully prepared. You can read
Yeah.
you could read all the books that you want, listen to podcasts, do crazy research, whatever you want. You're never going to be fully prepared to be a parent.
Yeah.
But I think adjusting to each situation, and specifically we're talking about tonight as an adoptive parent, is really, I think I don't know why I keep going back to this, but I think it's a number one, it's a mind thing, it's a mental thing. You need to really get that straight in your head. It's going to be a different journey, than with your biological children.
It is, and I think the time frame's different, right? When you're having a biological a child. In my case, we have children. But when you're having a child biologically, a lot of times you have 9 months, right? You have 9 months to kind of like get that through your head, your psyche, your of what it's going to be like.
Mm-hmm.
When you're adopting, yes, you're planning these things, but it doesn't seem real, and the anticipation is different because you never know, like, is it going to be today? Is it going to be tomorrow? You just don't know.
Yeah.
Is it going to be 10 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now? You don't usually know.
Yeah.
Especially in cases where it's like a foster to adopt or something like that. It's even more unknown. Sometimes with like international adoptions or even, adoptions, domestic adoptions, you do get a little bit more time because, someone selects you as their adoptive parent. So in that case, you would have a little bit more time. But with fostering and stuff, sometimes it could be like, okay, tomorrow, I have a child.
Mm-hmm.
And so you really have to try to be as prepared as you can be ahead of time.
Yeah.
So while you're waiting, make sure that you're doing things that will help you. Taking the classes, listening to podcasts, getting on Facebook, joining the groups, reading the books. Do those things ahead of time. I think especially talking and interacting with other people who are going through the same thing is
key.
The biggest, most important thing. If there's a support group nearby, get involved in that support group because those people are going to be your lifeline when you get in the midst of things because we can't always know ahead of time what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But if you're with a community that can kind of support you through whatever you're going through, it's so much more helpful in your parenting journey as an adoptive parent.
Absolutely. And with us, so there obviously was a parenting adjustment. Not only were we now adoptive parents, but we had triplets. So parenting multiples at the same time. So we already had children. We knew how to change diapers. We knew how to feed babies. We knew how to swaddle, do the baby burrito, all that kind of stuff. But then when it came to having 3 babies at the same time, the feeding times, like I was thinking about this earlier today. I always get it mixed up, but so we did a feeding. We'll start at the midnight, right? It was at midnight. So we do feeding at midnight, which I would do, right?
Yeah.
I would do the midnight feeding, and that took like an hour and a half to feed everybody.
Change all the
diapers.
Put them all back
Put them all back in bed. So all 3 girls, boom. So from midnight to 1:30ish, I would do that feeding. Then I would go to sleep, and then Jen would do the
3 a.m.
3 a.m. So she would do the 3 a.m. so I could sleep from midnight to 6. And so she would do the 3 a.m. So
1:30 to 6.
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
Yeah.
I might have been sleeping some of the time I was feeding them and changing them though.
Probably.
So then Jen would do the 3 a.m. so to 4:30. And then I would get up at the 6 a.m., do that one. and then I would go to work. Basically, I would sleep a little bit after that, and then I would go to work. And so that was an adjustment to us. And then also another thing that you adjust to with adoptive children is sometimes they may have some needs that your biological children didn't have when they were little. With our girls, we had a physical therapy and occupational therapy and all these other doctor's appointments and different things that we had to just adjust to our life and our parenting and knowing that, okay, this week we have, Monday occupational, Tuesday physical,
Wednesday occupational again.
Occupational again. And then all that. So it all was really, again, I'm going to go back to the mental side. Just, we were so tired. We were so, at times, like almost just at the end, right? But mentally, you just make that adjustment like, okay, these are my children. I love them. I'll do whatever I have to do for them to get them the best care, to get them to where they need to be. And so I think, again, my whole theme for that as a parent, again, is just that adjusting mentally. For me, I think that was the biggest
Well, I
thing.
think, kind of looking into this from the marriage angle too, I would say the first year of being a parent, no matter how you become a parent, you really have to give your spouse and yourself grace.
Yeah.
Because this is the biggest adjustment you'll probably ever do. I think having children or adopting children, however you become a parent, for me was a bigger adjustment than even getting married.
Yeah.
So I think you really have to give your spouse a little bit of grace. You guys are both going to be tired. You're both going to be stressed, right? Everything seems huge when you first become a parent.
The baby gets a snivel and you're like, oh my word, what's wrong?
Yes, every problem is magnified 100-fold. You're not getting a whole lot of sleep.
Yeah.
You're not eating right. You're not doing all these things. Self-care kind of dips a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Even when we try to keep it up, we're trying to navigate a whole new journey. And so it's really important. And for us, it was even though we had children, when we had triplets, we did the same thing. Like, whatever I say this first year doesn't matter. Do not take this seriously. Do not take this personally. Like, this is just, it's hard, and it's hard being a parent. So really, I think the most important thing marriage-wise for people becoming parents is to remember that this first year is going to be magical, amazing, and the hardest year of our lives. And you have to make sure that you're willing to give to your spouse and not let all the emotions and the anxiety and the tiredness and the fatigue and all that kind of stuff make you guys at odds with each other. So really kind of, make sure in your transition into parenthood that that's something that you remember.
Yeah.
After that first year, it gets so much easier because you get into those routines.
Because you have your rhythm. It's all about getting a rhythm.
It just becomes second nature, right? But that first year, it's a difficult challenge. And for some people, it's worse than others. Some people, came from homes where they had younger siblings or they babysat or they did these other things. So they're used to children around, right? They came from big families. Some people don't. Yeah. And so having the constraints, that sounds terrible, but when you have children, there are different constraints, right? You can't just get up and leave every time you want. You have a baby. They need fed, they need diapered, they need changed, they need bathed, they need all these things. And so it's a whole new, I'm not sure what the word I'm looking for, but it's a whole new world, basically. Yeah. And you have to adapt to it. And so it's going to take both of you a little time to do that. And so make sure that you are aware of that and you both are talking about it like, hey, and know yourself, because sometimes when you're like, I shouldn't have said that, I shouldn't have done that to my spouse. Like, I know it's just because I'm tired. make sure we're apologizing a lot
Totally.
during
Yeah,
that
make
first
sure.
year.
Yeah, like Jen said, don't hold the first year. Don't hold it against me, but don't just like pretend like it didn't happen.
Yeah,
Like you still
exactly.
have to
Be like, look,
apologize.
I'm sorry. I got 2 hours of sleep in the last 42 hours,
Yeah.
or whatever.
And
So,
and like Jen said, I was raised. I'm an only child, so I didn't have younger siblings. I wasn't around babies. I didn't know. I mean, when Jen went back to work after we had Boston, I think the first time I went out, I thought I killed him. Like he was crying, he was hungry. I get in the back seat, I take him out of the car seat to feed him, and I bang his head on the bar on the roof that you use to get in. Oh man, he's crying, I'm crying, everyone's crying. I'm calling Jen. Like, what do I do? How do I do it? Like, it was crazy.
yeah,
It's an adjustment.
it's
Adjusting to parenthood.
adjustment. No matter how you become a parent, it's an adjustment. When you're adopting, there's going to be questions that arise, right? From people outside your circle, from people inside your circle.
And I'm just gonna, everybody knows this, but here's just a little disclaimer. People are stupid.
We are dumb and we ask really dumb questions.
You're gonna get a lot of dumb questions.
But we've had a number of different children. Obviously, some children that we fostered were not the same ethnicity, and it was very obvious that they weren't the same ethnicity as us. So you get a lot of questions with that. Of course, adopting multiples, you get tons of questions like from that. So we've always been kind of like a source of interest for people, no matter where we are. So some advice that I've kind of like picked up over the years of doing this is, what do you do with questions from outsiders? And I think I always kind of try to gauge the intent of why people are asking questions. If I feel like it's genuine interest because, I've had people come up and talk to me because they wanted to adopt, or because, they had infertility issues or things like that. I always try to give them honest answers to their questions and take the time to actually answer their questions.
Helpful feedback.
Helpful, yes. And because I know there's not a lot of that out there. Sometimes they maybe don't know anyone who adopted, or they don't know anyone who went through different things. And so I think it's important that sometimes we slow down and we realize that, hey, these kids, we can't adopt every child. We can't foster every child. We can't help every child. But if I can help somebody else adopt or foster or feel like they can do this, and in that way save a child, then that is something that I want to do.
Absolutely.
So I think it's really important that gauging the interest, why do they want to know? If it's somebody just asking, silly questions like, oh, you don't even know. I've gotten so many stupid questions. It's been like really crazy. But I just try to give the littlest amount of information as I can, because a lot of times it's none of their business.
Yeah.
Or, a lot of times someone will be like, oh, especially when we had children who weren't the same ethnicity, like, where did you get them from? Or, where did they come? They're my children.
Yeah.
They're my children. And that was always my response. These are my children.
Yeah.
Like, oh, but where did they come from? They're my children,
I don't know what I don't understand what you're saying to me right now.
They're my children.
Jen's
and
very
then walk
kind.
away.
Mine would be like, I don't understand what you're saying to me. Like, what are you talking about? The triplets one is, my favorite thing is to make up like birth stories. So like, I think I've said we had at-home birth in the swimming pool.
Which would be impossible with triplets. Are you serious? Oh my gosh. Yeah. So I think just knowing or trying to gauge intent. If you don't know, I think it's important, especially if your kids are a little bit older, that we're very careful with the information we give out.
Totally.
And we're very careful about the questions that people are asking, because they can be harmful to our children sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And so luckily with, our children, they were young enough where when I did get awful questions, they were too young to understand at that point. They were infants. With the triplets, I haven't gotten too many because they look like us.
Yeah.
So people just assume that they're ours biologically. But, do be aware that people will ask questions and have an answer. Or sometimes, when people, if they ask a very offensive question, I'll just say, you know what, that's kind of offensive.
Yeah.
To my child, and, let them understand. And actually, with the triplets, I've had people say like, oh my God, I would kill myself.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, these are my children. Like, you're telling my children that
If
I
you
should
have
want to kill myself because they're triplets, So with stuff like that, I think you can kindly let them know, like, that was a really stupid thing to say,
That was rude.
So just be aware that you will get questions
Mm-hmm.
and be ready for them. And if your kids are older, I would give out as little information as possible. Or you can let your children, in some instances, you can let your children answer the questions if they want to or if they don't want to.
Yeah.
Questions from insiders, family, friends, acquaintances.
Disclaimer here. People are stupid.
Not our family and friends. They're awesome. Since they're the only ones that listen. No. No, but I think it's important that your family, especially your close family and friends, that they know about your children, right? They don't have to know every intimate detail, but I think it's important for them to know their story, because a lot of times, especially as your children get older, they might ask questions from others that they trust.
Uncle, grandma, grandpa.
Yeah, and not you, because they don't want to hurt your feelings, right?
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to hurt your feelings by asking about a biological mom or a biological dad, which they wouldn't, but in their little minds, they may feel like they're betraying you on some level. So I think it's important that grandmas and grandpas, aunts and uncles, they know your child's story. It doesn't have to be, but make sure it's people that you trust, because you might have family members that just don't understand the process, and they're not going to at all. So I know we're doing a lot of disclaimers this time, but side note, do make sure the people that you are telling the story to, that they're going to keep it for your children, and they understand the gravity of sharing these things.
And I think with that they want to be a positive part of the story.
Yes.
If they don't, it's none of their business, and they can see their way out. This A and B conversation is your way out. And that sounds harsh and cruel, but these are your children.
Yeah.
These are our children, and our number one priority is to protect them.
I think it's important to let your extended family and friends know ahead of time too what you're planning as far as the adoption. This kind of goes back to what we were doing before, but you want to make sure that you have these people on board with you for what you're doing, because what they say and what they're pouring into your kids as your friends and family is going to be a big part of their lives and a big part of who they become. And if they're not accepted as part of the family, if they're not treated just like everyone else who's blood or not blood, that can be an issue. And you need to know those things ahead of time so you can protect your children.
Absolutely.
So if there's people that you're like, you know what, this person really isn't 100% on board, I'm not really sure how much they would, be okay around my children, just make sure you limit access. And it doesn't mean you have to cut them off completely, but just know ahead of time, hey, you know what, I may see them at Thanksgiving and maybe that's it, like
you set the
protect
boundaries.
your kids. Yeah. Set those boundaries and protect your kids. And if they can't get on board with it, then you can cut them out if you need to. But I think even in those cases, you can sit down and talk to them and say, hey, you know what, maybe, for you, you don't understand the process of how this works, but these are our children.
Yeah.
This is my flesh and blood. Bottom line, and no matter how I had them, they're mine.
Totally. And we would love for you to be a part of this, story, part of this family. But if you can't be or don't want to be, hey, I understand.
Yes.
But Here's the boundaries that we're setting. If you can abide by them, wonderful. We'd love to have you. If not, I'm sorry.
And I've heard horror stories where like there would be grandparents who would only buy presents for biological children, but not adoptive children. You don't want that because that would cause so much division. So
hurt. Yeah.
I know families where they just had to say, okay, don't buy presents for any of our kids. So that way it's equal across the board. You know, if you're not going to buy them for all of them, don't buy them for any of them. We'll still, you know, let you see them at Christmas time or whatever, but we're not going to let you differentiate between our children. They're all our children. So I know that's kind of a rabbit trail too, but make sure that, you know, with friends and family that they're kind of on board, or they're absolutely on board, not kind of on board. And the ones that are kind of on board, make sure they get on board. You're also going to get questions from your children, right? And this is from your biological children, from your adoptive children. If you have both at the same time, of course, there'll be questions. And so you won't be prepared. I hate to tell you this. I wish I could give you some hope, but
we'll email you a link after this of every question they're going to ask. That'd be
and the
amazing.
time frame. They will ask questions at times that you think you're ready and you think you have the answers, but when it comes, it's going to be a challenge. And so I think having a action plan way ahead of time of how you address these issues is super important. So that way you're consistent in your questions for your children. We purposed at the beginning of this journey that our children would always know their story. And obviously we tell them in an age appropriate way.
Yes.
So they understand it without giving them, you know, all the gory details.
Yeah.
But they still have an understanding. I never do not answer a question.
Yeah, we purpose to never lie and to never hide. So we're not going to hide anything from them. Again, age appropriate.
Right.
So if you've adopted a child, maybe we'll say through the foster system, and their biological parents were addicts and, you know, maybe not good people. We don't tell a small child that, oh, well, your mom or your dad was a druggie.
Yeah.
You need to be age appropriate with them. They were sick or something along those lines.
I think we even decided not to do sick because we didn't want them to think like, oh, if mom or dad got sick, then they're going to go away too. So we broke it down into, okay, you know how when you take medicine, you can only take a certain amount. And if you take more, it's bad for you and it can make you, you know, it can make you sick and it can keep you from doing things that you need to do because you can't think straight. So we kind of tried to break it down as much as we could. And I never tell my child how to feel about their biological child or their biological parents or family. However they feel in whatever stage they are, I want them to be able to express that to me. If they want to meet their parents, their biological parent, let me know. In our case, it wouldn't be safe for them to meet their biological parents probably until they're a little bit older. So we've let our girls know, hey, when you're older, if you would like to, we'll see if we could set it up, you know, but at this point it wouldn't be safe. So they know that, okay, when I'm this age, if I want to, I can do that.
Yeah.
So I think it's just really important that it's normalized to them, that they understand they came from another family, that whatever their emotions are can be valid, but we don't try to change their emotion.
Yeah.
So, and we don't try to direct them. Now, if you see your child becoming very angry and upset and stuff like that, obviously that's something that if it's an emotion that's hurting your child, then definitely we need to address that. And I would say probably get some counseling. Yes, definitely, because sometimes there's things under their trauma. It could, even when you adopt as an infant, there can be trauma. And so those things probably need to be talked to with someone who's not as close to the situation as the parents would be. So make sure that you are prepared for the questions, but know that you might not feel prepared when they come.
And And it's okay to also say, if you don't have the right answer, it's okay to say, you know what, that's a good question, and I promise you, I'm going to answer it, but at this point, I just don't have the right words to say. Obviously, that's going to be for an older child.
Yeah.
But again, you're not lying to them. You're not making something up. It's okay to tell them, acknowledge what they've asked and let them know at this point, I don't have the words to answer, but I will. I'm going to
and
answer
give them
that.
a specific time frame, because I think you can push it off, and they feel like, well, they're just never going to tell me.
Mhm.
Say, hey, you know
if
what?
it's something because they shouldn't know right now because of their age,
Right.
When you turn 18, we're going to sit down and have a conversation about your entire story.
Right. And I'll give you the documents, or I'll give you this. So I think that's super important, that you're being honest with them and making sure that they feel comfortable in coming to you with those questions as well. Don't feel like it's something against you if they're curious about where they came from. That's natural.
And for parents, anyone that's listening that you don't have adopted children, you're not looking to adopt, that's a good rule to have with all of your children. Questions are okay to be asked no matter what they are. And that goes for all of our children.
Yeah.
And even when they do something wrong, they know that they can come to us, let us know. And if they come to us and let us know, we're not going to get mad at them.
Yeah.
There's going to be consequences if it was something that they should not have done, right? If it's something that deserves consequences. But we've laid that out for our older children too, and they will come to us. One prefers to go to Jen, another prefers to come to me, and that's perfectly fine. And because we're getting the information, right? But we have that, I guess you call it open door policy. So I think not only with your adopted children, there's questions, but your biological children, and then also pass the questions. Hey, if you get in trouble, we're here.
Yeah.
Come talk to us.
Yeah. That's so, so important. So this kind of goes into our next topic, supporting your child through identity exploration. A lot of times there'll be questions of why they came into whether it's an adoptive placement or foster placement or whatever that is. And then questions about, is it okay to love their bio family? Is it okay to feel these things? And I think there's so many books now and resources out there. I think it's really important to kind of do your research on those things. And there's a lot of age appropriate ones, even for little ones, about foster care, about adoption. And if you look, there's even stories about adoption and foster care in the Bible that are helpful and can kind of if we want to dig down, Jesus was adopted by Joseph, right?
Yeah.
So, there's so many.
Moses.
Yes, Moses is a beautiful one. There's so many stories throughout the Bible where people were adopted. So if you can't find those resources, which they're all over Amazon, so no one should have any trouble. But if you wanted to, look at faith-based things, there's also throughout the Bible, there's all those different examples of adoption and fostering and those type of things. So we have a number of different resources that are at our disposal that we can use to kind of help our children understand what foster care is, what adoption is, what parenting is, and different ways that a child can become your child. And I think for us, we've always kind of gone down that road when we've talked about becoming a parent with our children. We've always talked about, we've normalized it to the point where we let our children know there's a number of ways to become a parent.
Yes.
It's not just, you have a child in your stomach and birth a child. You can adopt a child. You can have a child through in vitro. You can have a surrogate. You can have all these different ways.
Become a step parent. You marry somebody that has children.
There's so many different ways to become a parent. So they don't feel like their situation is odd.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want them to feel any less than one another because they became my child a different way.
Yeah.
And so we've always been really
Normalize it.
Yes, we've always been really sure to make sure that our children understand we've intentionally made our children understand that, you know what, it doesn't matter how you become a parent. Here are the different ways to become a parent. And
It's just so amazing to become a parent.
Yes, that's the most important part,
Mm-hmm.
right? So those are really some of the big things that you're going to get asked and big things that you'll get questions about from your children, from your family. And like I said, you might not feel like you're going to be able to give them the best answer. But if you're honest, I don't think that there is a wrong answer.
Yeah.
If you're honest, but also remember your child. We talked about age appropriate. We also have to remember that the way we answer the questions can be detrimental if we're not careful. So, we talked about in the instance of, maybe you adopt a child where they were from an abusive home.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you adopt me, or how did I become adoptable? Well, your mom was an abusive drunk. And, you don't want to, yes, it's honest,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, you're hurting your child. So you have to be careful the information you're giving and how you're giving it.
Yeah.
One day they're going to know the whole story.
Mm-hmm.
My children one day may know they will know their entire story fully, but not until they're probably older teens.
Definitely.
Will I give them all the details? And I don't know if every single thing has to be given. And my thought process is I met their parents in the worst time of their life.
Mm-hmm.
Their children were being taken away from them. They had reached the depths of disparity and had no hope. Would I want that time of their lives to be a reflection of their whole lives to my child? That time of their life is not who they were their entire life.
No.
And so I have to be real careful in how I portray them as well. Now, I'm not going to make them saints, and I'm not going to tell them fairy tales or make it seem like, everything was wonderful, but I'm also not going to demonize these people who were in a very terrible situation.
Because it does hurt your children.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes some people, when it comes to that too, it's childish to think this way, but I've met people that do. When they put down the biological family, it's like lifting them up.
Yeah.
Like, oh, we're so great and they're so bad. That doesn't work like that with your children, especially as they get older. And then if they do meet their biological family, all those terrible things you said about those people, they're not going to see that obviously in that meeting, right?
Right.
And so now you've lied to them and
well, they feel like you've lied to them.
Exactly.
Because you only showed them a little portion of the whole story.
Absolutely.
So I think it's really important that if there's things that are not going to change the story, that are not going to be any beneficial thing for them, it's not.
Keep it out.
Yeah, it's
Don't
not
give it to
worth,
them.
talking about it. Like, oh, in the hospital, your mom did this, or, your dad did this, or whatever. What is the point of that? Yeah. They need the general story, but they don't need
the dirty details.
Horrible details of a situation where somebody was desperate.
Mm-hmm.
So always be mindful of that too. What you say about your child's biological family can hurt your child. And bottom line, I would do anything not to hurt my child. And I think any parent would. And so it's really important to just remember that.
Well, the Bible lets us know that the power of life and death is in the tongue.
Mm-hmm.
And even in those type of situations, are you giving them life or are you giving death to that situation?
So good.
All right. So last thing we wanted to talk about was steps to take to get kind of your adoption process started, if you will. Number one, I think you got to know your family.
Yeah.
You got to know your home. If you already have children, you need to sit down with them and make sure everybody's on board. And I know sometimes that might seem like, as a parent, like, well, I'm the parent and they're the children. I make the decisions. But this is going to affect them as well.
Mm-hmm.
And our opinion is if everybody in the home is not on board, then you don't move forward.
With
Because
something that's important, I think that's absolutely so important.
yeah,
And I know I talked about this before in the last episode, but we made sure that our kids were on board with the process too. Because if you don't, the children are going to end up resenting that.
absolutely.
And they're going to give up a lot. Your biological children are going to give up a lot for their siblings.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
even right, if you're an only child, you now have a biological baby brother, sister. What you're giving
give
up.
up,
There's
yes.
a whole movie about it, right? What's that, Boss Baby?
Yes.
That's true to life.
Boss
No.
Baby 1, 2. Yeah. So, I mean, there's obviously going to be, there's always sibling rivalry, but you have to make sure your children are on board with the process. Yes. So, you know, especially if you're doing foster care, I think going the foster care route, it's even more important because some of the children are not going to stay in your home.
Yeah, because even if you receive a foster to adopt placement, this happened to us multiple times throughout this process. So, oh yeah, they're absolutely, it's going to termination of parental rights and you're going to be able to adopt. Boom, everyone gets excited and it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And so that's why you got to start in your home. You got to start with the family and make sure everybody knows and everybody's on board. And throughout the entire process, everybody is a part of it.
Yes, that's so important. It's a family affair.
Absolutely. And kind of to go back a little bit, we started in our home with the boys. And then we went outside of our home to our family and close friends, let them know, what we were going to be doing, and had that talk of you can be a part of it or you cannot be a part of it, and all of that. So that's where I think you need to start, number one. Number two, you need to decide what route you want to go, right? If you want to go private, if you want to go international, now you can even adopt embryos. So I think it's called snowflake babies or something along those lines. So you actually adopt an embryo that can be implanted for IVF or in vitro. And so that's an option. Or are you going to go the foster to adopt route? So you need to really decide, again, thinking about your family, thinking about your own, what is best for you. Some people are just like, I don't want to go the foster to adopt route. I just think that would be too much for our family, for our home. We want to go, the private adoption route. Perfect. Get the information you need about that. Get in contact with a good adoption agency, an adoption attorney. Make sure you have fully studied this and understand what you're getting into.
And also look at your company wherever you work.
Yes.
A lot of companies, a lot of corporations will give funds towards adopting.
Absolutely.
and really help support that. So that's always a good place to start too. Like, what does your company offer as far as benefits for going through that adoption process? Know that nothing is going to be a sure thing.
Absolutely.
No matter how you go about adoption, it could fall through at any time up until you sign those papers.
Yes.
That's a great feeling. But I I don't want it
Don't
to
allow it to
scare
scare you
you
away.
off
Yep.
because
Don't allow it to
the
scare you away.
child that God has for you or children that God has for you, it will happen for you.
Absolutely.
Even if it feels like it's never going to work, that there's too many obstacles in the way. The babies that are supposed to be your babies will be your babies.
Yours. And if you go the foster to adopt route and those babies that come into your home, those children that come into your home, that, it doesn't go to adoption, the love, the prayers, the time that you spent with them will make a positive impact on their lives and really help change them for the better.
And your life.
Absolutely.
I can't imagine my life without those children in it. They were a part of our story. They were a part of my journey into motherhood.
Yeah.
Even though now they're being mothered by other mothers, it doesn't change what I had with them. It doesn't change the time that I had with them. And I would never change being their mother, even if it was only for a short period of time.
Absolutely. So good. And then I think once you have decided the route that's best for your family, fully commit to the process.
Yep.
Fully commit.
All in.
This is what we're doing. You can't half-hearted. You can't, I'll get to it tomorrow. The grass needs to be long. I'll get to it tomorrow. It can't be one of those things. You are all in. The whole family is all in. We're fully committed, whatever that means.
Yeah.
Whatever needs to be done, we're there. We're going to do it. Why? Because these are our babies. This is our family, and this is what God has for us. And just dive right in. It's going to be crazy. I want you to know right now, it's going to be crazy, but it is absolutely 1,000,000% worth it.
Yeah.
All the craziness, it's worth it. All the stress, the tears, both happy and sad.
Yeah.
1,000,000% worth it. Completely.
Absolutely.
And totally. So, if you're listening and you have questions that maybe we didn't answer, or because obviously we can't answer every single question, we've been going for another 50 minutes and we could go on for a long time. Reach out to us. You can reach out to us on our social media platforms. You can direct message us on both Facebook at LoveWorks Podcasts or Instagram, the LoveWorks Podcasts. You can email us at the LoveWorks Podcast at gmail.com. And if you are personal friends of ours and you have questions, just reach out to us. You live close by, we'll be happy to have a cup of coffee with you. Give us a call, whatever we can do to help you through the process, because it's amazing. It is absolutely amazing. And maybe you're at the point where you want to help children, but you aren't at the point where that you can adopt or maybe even foster. There's so many ways that you can donate time, your talents, your treasures. I mentioned it in our last episode. Jen is a part of AV Foster Friends, and there's actually a quilting group community
I forgot
that
about
quilts the most amazing blankets and donates them for free to the AV Foster Friends, and they're able to give these blankets to these foster children. And we actually were able to be a part of it at a Christmas gathering, and to see the looks on their face. They were able to choose the blanket they wanted, and these were amazing.
They were so beautiful,
beautiful. And they quilted them. They gave
There's
their
so
talents.
many ways.
There's
there really
so many
is.
ways.
There's never, if you have a burden for kids that are without homes or without families, there's so many ways to be involved. Anyone can do it. It could be an hour out of your week.
Yeah.
It could be however long you want it to be, however not long you want it to be. But there's so many ways. So if you're questioning, how do I become involved in my community? How do I become involved with these kids? How can I be a part of the solution to support these children? Reach out to us.
Mm-hmm.
We can help you with resources in your community. We can help connect you to people who will be able to get you involved. And it's amazing. There's nothing else like giving to a child in need, because you know that they're going to appreciate it, and there's nothing else really worth it as much as that. I don't know.
There's nothing quite like helping a child.
There isn't.
There isn't. And so biblical perspective, As you know, we always like to give scripture. And I know I used this one in our last episode, but it is so fitting. Psalm 127:3. It's a New King James Version. I'll be reading. Behold, children are a heritage from the Lord. The fruit of the womb is a reward. All children are a heritage of the Lord. And the fruit of the womb, not your womb, but the womb, our reward. And so we just want to leave that with you. Thank you so much for joining us on this second part of our adoption journey. And we're just going to close this out in prayer. Dear Lord, we thank you for this opportunity, Lord, to be able to share our journey and our burden. We thank you so very much for that. We thank you for the guidance you gave us through it and that you continue to do so today. Lord, I pray that somebody that's listening, maybe they're listening right when we release this episode, or it's in 6 months or 6 years. I pray that something that we say will help not only inspire them, but spur them into action. Lord, we thank you and we praise you. In Jesus' precious name we pray. Amen and amen. And as always, remember, love works. So let's get to work.